Good morning, everyone, and this is Luciana Turner of the LT&A Consulting Group, bringing you this morning's edition of Morning Tidbit. How are you doing? Um, we're going to be brief this morning because, as you know, Morning Tidbit is just a touch of information that you need to stay abreast of what's going on in the government contracting and business world. And I just thought I would bring you the latest in the, I'm not sure what they named the act. I think it was the American Anti Inflation Act that was just recently passed in Congress, where the IRS was funded. I believe the amount was $85 million to increase auditors. Now, I've touched on this before. I believe it was the end of last year, first of this year, where the IRS was asking for somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 trillion in funding to increase audit. And they were specifically going after the PPP violators. Um, I do know the president signed an executive order that targeted people that were committing fraud along those lines as well. So those who received funding under the PPP loan program who cannot properly document the use of those funds, be on the lookout. They're they're gunning for people. Um, they use street vernacular to stimulate the economy. Unfortunately, the decision was made to print money. We gave out stimulus. Now, I do agree that we needed to fund businesses. We needed to do something to keep the doors open. And small businesses do fuel our economy. However, we printed other money, we printed other funds that, quite frankly, are we didn't have. But we have to retrieve, we have to recoup in some way, shape, or form. That's why the uptick in audits. That's why going after fraud, and quite frankly, I agree with it. We need to go after people who did not use the funds appropriately. Now, I was privy to a conversation, secondhand, but it was a conversation around the PPP loan specifically, where the IRS started running a cursory trace on the addresses used for the funds. And some of the addresses just didn't pass the initial muster, but these people were approved in the first round of funding. So those are the people, the first round people specifically, especially, you're going to see those people getting questioned hard around the funding and how they used it. A lot of people, unfortunately, received larger loans amounts in that first round because they were just giving out money without doing proper due diligence in the first round. And a lot of those people did not have businesses. And a lot of those people did not use the money for strictly business reasons, which is what the money was for. It was for the stimulating of economy. It was for getting people back to work. It was for keeping people employed. And unfortunately, people use that money for other reasons. Why is this important for government contractors? Simply put, we have a supply chain issue. And uptick in audits can further disrupt the supply chain. Government contractors rely on the supply chain just like everyone else, especially those who do construction, um, work for the port, road. construction, and anyone who drives know they're doing a lot of construction. Anyone that's looking at bids with HUD, we know supply chain is an issue. The uptick in audits, the increased oversight can lead to additional supply chain delays. So, what I'm saying is, we need to be proactive. We need to say, what are we bidding on, and how will that affect our supply needs? And take proactive steps to get ahead of those needs. So, since we have an idea of what's coming down the pike, we need to create a plan of action to mitigate anything that can potentially disrupt or increase disruptions in the supply chain that we may experience as government contractors. So, as a contractor specifically, we must keep an eye towards the future, keeping an eye on what's going on with the bills that are being passed, the additional funding. We have the new government year starting. We're halfway, we're partway through August. We're a month away from the new fiscal year. We have to keep an eye out with these new bills being dropped, how it's going to affect the upcoming budget year. Um, Especially with them still funding the government with continuing resolutions in some areas. So we have to keep that eye. We have to keep a strategic eye out. We have to keep a strategic plan that is firmly fixed but strategically flexible, if that makes sense. I'll do a little more talk about that on my podcast that's dropping soon. And I will talk about that in I have a book series that I'm working on. The first volume will drop this winter. I talk about strategic planning and government contracting and keeping an eye in the present as well as the future and how important that is for contracting success. So I will wrap up today with that bit of news. So make sure that your books are in order. If you received any of that loan funding, make sure that if you did not repay the loan and you received that waiver, that you can show how you spent that money because the IRS was just funded and they do intend to audit the PPP loan funds initially. So I'll see you tomorrow morning for another edition of Morning Tidbit. This is Luciana Turner of the LT&A Consulting Group, and I will see you tomorrow.